Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of Go Ballistic. Big week ahead, particularly for Rangers, but we'll also have Celtic news and a review of the Premier Sports Cup to come. I'm Ryan Rowe, to my left is Roger Hannah, and we'll soon have Kris Boyd dialing in too. So we'll start off, Roger, looking at Rangers Panathinaikos this week, big Champions League qualifier. A sort of Rangers select side played Middlesbrough at the weekend, drew 2-2. What were your takeaways from that one in particular?
Well, takeaway number one, John Beaton can give decisions against Rangers. I'm only kidding, John. Listen, it didn't matter. It was never going to be a game that did matter because it was going to be the guys who hadn't featured against Panathinaikos and probably won't feature against Panathinaikos, other than the subs. Finlay Curtis and Danilo come on, did their chances and their reputation no harm at all. We said about 7 days ago, Rangers fans wouldn't have been that happy to have a front three of Finlay Curtis, Danilo and Kieran Dowell, but they did well in that first leg. They've probably earned the opportunity to start in the second leg. I'm not sure either Dessers or Gassama will really be ready to start the game in Athens on Wednesday evening, so that will be the probable takeaway, that this rebirth of Danilo and the emergence of Finlay Curtis seems to continue.
Yep, I thought Kris was actually correct last week when he said Rangers were going into the tie undercooked, even though they went on and won the game, because I think that first half at Ibrox against Panathinaikos, we saw the teething problem, so to speak, in terms of the building out from the back.
I mean, they could have been a couple of goals down had it not been for Jack Butland. Even a couple of saves early in the second half. A routine save it was that he bounced up and started the move that led to Finlay Curtis's opening goal for Rangers. So it was very much a team effort. Curtis and Gassama, their first Rangers goals, they would get the headlines, but it was an important performance by Butland as well at the other end, and at a time when he's probably under more scrutiny than he's ever been in his Rangers career.
Danilo, you touched on, he scored again at the weekend. Yeah. Do you expect him to lead the line, because we still haven't seen too much of Dessers and Igaman in pre-season? Yeah,
I think he will lead the line on Wednesday. Dessers we saw for a few minutes against Panathinaikos last week. Igaman not seen against Middlesbrough at the weekend again. So I would think Danilo's probably earned the chance to lead the line in Greece. And listen, all he can do is keep scoring goals.
Oliver Antman is the latest name we've heard linked with a move to Rangers. Ironically, his teammate Jacob Broom has been linked to Celtic. There's reports in the Netherlands saying that Go Ahead Eagles, the club that they play for, won't sell both of them. It's clear that Rangers want a winger. We've had Jesserin Raksakiu as well linked for the past few weeks. He actually picked up an injury on Friday night. Yeah. We don't know how serious that is yet, but it's clearly a area that Rangers want to strengthen. Finlay Curtis, of course, played very well, great goal, but that seems to be an area Russell Martin's not quite happy with yet. Listen,
Russell admitted it himself on Friday, spoke about Jesserin Raksakiu and the interest. He didn't get hurt, come on as a sub, I think, for Palace against Crawley on Friday night. We don't know the extent of the injury. I think when you're looking, there's the report down south this morning linking Rangers with Mikey Moore, this teenagers coming through at Tottenham who's going to be allowed out on loan. There's the talk of Ant-Man, great name for headlines.
Yep.
Talk of him maybe coming from the Netherlands. I think at this stage Russell Martin is just sort of looking at potential backups in case the Raksaki thing doesn't happen. And it might not just be, for injury point of view, they've yet to be able to agree a deal with Palace. We know that Wolves are interested in the player as well. So it's probably just prudent for Rangers to have a few options lined up.
The last thing I want to touch on here, you mentioned that Russell Martin, John Beaton had a little bit of a tiff in the tunnel. Do you actually think a few Rangers fans will like seeing that side of Russell Martin? To an extent.
Possibly.
Just that passion. And there was also a quote he said where he spoke about players in the warm-up, and I'll be interested to see what Kris Boyd says of this. Players that weren't named in the starting 11 and their attitude in the warm-up was, I'm not playing, I'm not too happy about that. And that's not going to fly.
I mean, I was actually quite surprised. It's a pre-season friendly. It was a bad decision. John will know it was a bad decision. I was just quite surprised it got to such a heated extent between the two of them, and a kind of nothing game, if you like. Fair enough if it's a Premiership game or a Cup game and there's something on the line. That was the thing that surprised me more than anything else. But I think the players have seen another side of him. He's spoken a couple of times before that things weren't quite to his liking and he wasn't going to sort of stand for that kind of thing. But it's a big job for Russell Martin. There are lots of different strands to it. The one he's immediately facing is getting past Panathinaikos to take on either Victoria Pilsen or Servette in the next round. He's then got Motherwell on Saturday night at Fir Park. Never an easy place to go for Rangers. And he's got the dual issue of bringing players in. We speak about Raksaki and Moore and all of these players who might be coming in. He's always still got a job of getting a lot of players out the place. You know, we spoke about it last week. Since then, they've not exactly been getting fired out the door. You know, still there, Cifuentes, Davis, Matondo. I know he's carrying injuries now. King. There are a lot of players there who I think you would deem surplus to requirements. And I think for everyone's best interests, Rangers should be trying to get them out the door quickly.
So, mentioned there about Kris and his reaction to what Russell Martin said. If you have any questions for Kris Boyd, send an email. It'll be linked in the description down below to Roger and to Kris. So we'll move on to Celtic. They'll have the Premiership, you know, the flag day against them at the weekend. The Como Cup wasn't quite the pre-season treble they were looking for. The 5-1 defeat against Ajax was probably a little bit harsh considering how well Celtic played the first half. But the 1-1 draw against Al-Ahli, Celtic won in penalties. By all accounts, in the first half, Al-Ahli, I thought, dominated the match. What did you take away from seeing bits of it?
Listen, I'm sure Brendan Rodgers, now that they're back in Scotland, will be content with the pre-season. I think Celtic have played 7 games in 4 different countries through the pre-season. It's all about getting the players up to speed for Flag Day, for St Mirren on Sunday. And then beyond that, remember Celtic have a Champions League playoff round that they've not had for a couple of years. They need to get through that as well. He'll be pleased that there are no significant injuries, and among all of that, everyone's come through it okay. He's bedded back in. Rio Hitatu, who of course missed the end of last season. He's got a little bit out. Some of the new signings, Shin Yamada scored a winning penalty against the looked good by all accounts as well. Kieran Tierney's back in the fold. So there are little positive nuggets to take out of that. Take out the Ajax game, some positive results in there as well, you know, beating Sporting Lisbon in Portugal, etc. So I think Brendan Rodgers will be pleased with the way the current players are progressing towards Flag Day, but he can't disguise his growing frustration at an inability to bolster that squad.
Yeah, I was just about to say, the team that he named to play Al-Ahli, of course, it was about getting minutes in the leads, but there were so many changes to that. Yeah. Do you think that was a little bit of him maybe proving a point about his growing frustrations with the transfer market?
Well, listen, he doesn't need to do little things like that. I mean, he speaks after most games about the need to get players in, about his desire to add quantity and quality. They do look short of numbers, Ryan. There's no doubt about it. I thought at the end of last season they looked short of numbers in certain areas. I thought central midfield they were a body down. Maybe Benjamin Nygren is going to be the guy who's going to go in there in a kind of 8 or a 10 or whatever. They look short of wide players now. Jota's injury, obviously. Nicholas Kuhn has departed as well. There's been talk of Yang departing. They need to sort of fast track a couple of wide players in. And the centre forward thing still fascinates me. Maybe Shin Yamada is going to be the centre forward. Maybe Adam Ida is going to be the centre forward. Maybe Dyson Maida is going to be the centre forward. But there's still no one emerging from the pack to actually say, I'm going to be the guy who's going to lead the line this season.
Now, you mentioned a lot of positions there. Another one that's came up kind of overnight over the weekend was centre-back. Yeah. Jemai Simpson-Pusey from Manchester City, coming up on loan. Now, a Premier League club of Manchester City standing, and indeed, despite this lad only being 18, I imagine his agent would not want him to go to a club where he wasn't going to play very often. So a player like that coming up, what does that mean for like a Stephen Welsh, but then also Liam Scales, maybe even Austin Trusty? £6 million last summer.
I'm not quite sure the status of this at the minute. The lad did play a bits and bobs. Celtic have a really good relationship with Manchester City and the City Group. They have done over a number of years. If you look at the heart of that Celtic defence, Carter Vickers is nailed on. If he's fit, he will play. So it's a case of who's going to play alongside him. There are lots of options. Stephen Welsh, I think when he headed out to Belgium, to Mechelen in the second half of last season, that sort of signalled that probably he's not going to be among the first choices. Dane Murray, I'm not quite sure is ready for that yet. Lagerbielke's gone, Nawrocki's gone. So you've got three options. You either go with Liam Scales, who's never really let Celtic down too much. You go with the £6 million man, Austin Trusty, who again hasn't really nailed himself in there with his American compatriot as a central defensive pairing, or you look elsewhere. I tended to think if they were looking elsewhere, it would be a permanent signing, it would be a proper left-sided centre-half, and they would pay a bit of money for him. So the emergence of Simpson Pusey last night surprised me. I don't think the deal's over the line yet, but it'll be an interesting one to see how it goes. And as ever for Celtic, the key is going to be to try and keep Cameron Carter-Vickers fit and on the pitch.
So the Premier Sports Cup group stages concluded over the weekend. We're now obviously looking forward to the start of the Premiership. We've got the draw for the Premier Sports Cup last 16. That's been made. Yeah. A couple of highlights there as well. So before we kind of look back at some of the outcomes from that group stage, do you have a tie of the round? Was it Rangers hosting Alloa as one of them?
You know something, there's a few candidates. Celtic Falkirk at that stage last year was really good. Falkirk went and they eventually lost 5 goals, but they were in the game for a real long time as a championship team, just up from League One at that stage. So it's going to happen all over again, and it's one to look forward to. I quite like the last one, St Mirren against Hearts. St Mirren edged out Ayr yesterday. Yep. Killian Phillips played very well again. And the reward is a home tie against a Hearts side who charged through the group stages, will fancy themselves domestically this season because they don't have the extra burden of European football. They've a big squad, they've a new manager. Tony Bloom's coming to see them next Monday against Aberdeen in the Premiership opener. So St Mirren against Hearts sort of jumped out at me.
Yep, so the main shock was Dundee
not going through.
Probably touched on it a little bit before, and Stephen Presley almost put himself in the back foot immediately with that quote, which in isolation, if you want a man that's got experience of winning titles, that's not me. But I think the Dundee fans, obviously his history as well with Dundee United across the city, is he the first man in the Premiership hot seat? Not even kicked a ball yet, but we're talking about this.
Well, sometimes you don't need to kick a ball. I remember Graham Alexander being sacked by Motherwell before the season started off the back of a defeat to Sligo Rovers. So anything can happen in Scottish football, Ryan. I'm long enough in the tooth to know that. It's an awkward wee start in the league for Elvis and Dundee. They've got Hibs at home on Sunday. Tough. I then think they go to Ibrox the following Saturday night. They go to Kilmarnock. There's then a Dundee derby before the end of August as well at Den, so it is an awkward start. A bit like Brendan Rodgers at Celtic, Stephen knows he needs to bring players in. Dundee have lost probably more first picks than any other team in the Premiership. You think last season they had Tiffany and Palmer Holden and Adewumi, and they had Mulligan and they had Silla and they had Cameron, they had Larkesh at left back, they had the likes of Portales and the club captain Joe Shaughnessy. They've all gone. Jordan McGee, another one. They've all gone out the door, and they've not yet been adequately replaced in terms of quantity or quality. Elvis said they were short of games pre-season ahead of starting in the League Cup. That's what caught them out against Airdrie and against Alloa. They have looked better in second half at Bonnyrigg, and then when they beat Montrose at the weekend, they have looked better. Now they've got games under their belt. But they need players in. Simon Murray took a knock at the weekend as well. He, club captain, top scorer last season, he is going to be crucial to them. They cannot afford to have him on the sidelines, but they need players in.
Going across the other side of the city then, Dundee United, you would have seen 1-0 victory over Unastrassen, but 0 Scots in the starting 11. What did you make of that? Do you think it's a particular worry for the game, for the national team?
Yeah, I do. I was sort of monitoring a few teams signing policies during the summer, and a lot of teams do look out with Scotland. You can go, Stephen Robinson at St Mirren tends to go Irish players or English players. He's actually signed a couple of lads for Jamaica this summer as well. Aberdeen haven't brought in too many Scots this summer. I think you've got 3 Australians in among all of their signings coming in. And United, they were the ones that you really look at, because for the first time in the club's history, picked a team without a Scot. The thing that really made the point for me, and Bill Lecky's mentioned it in his column in the Scottish Sun this morning, was Jim Goodwin's explanation. Jim Goodwin says he signs these lads because they're not pampered like the guys in Scotland's academies, and they've earned where they are, and they come with the right attitude, and they come to fight and to win. And the subtext of that is the guys coming out of Scotland's academies are too soft for what I need at Dundee United. And that was the thing that
it's a telling quote.
Yeah, that was the thing that had the lights flashing for me. So this story, I think, this season is going to run and run. How few Scots there are playing in the Premiership, how few Scots are signed by Premiership clubs, and then the knock-on effect for Steve Clarke and for the Scotland team. Because if Scotland have a bad start or a bad run in these World Cup qualifiers in the autumn, and it's a very, very short period of time these 6 qualifiers are going to take place in. If Scotland don't make it to North America, there will be a massive inquest, and this will be part of the inquest that Steve Clarke just doesn't have enough players to choose from now.
Yeah, because I've heard the argument that Scotland's best players have always went abroad, or down south. I feel like the 70s and the 80s, a lot of the best players went to England, but there would still be a pool of players to choose from at Rangers, Celtic, Dundee, and that's maybe what's going away.
You're talking about at the time when Liverpool had Douglas, Souness and Hansen, and Manchester United had Jordan and McQueen and Macari and guys like that. But when those guys were in England, Jim McLean and Alec Ferguson were still picking 11 Scots for the United and Aberdeen. Billy McNeil and whether it was John Gregg or Jock Waller were still picking more or less 11 Scots for the Celtic and Rangers teams. So there was no shortage of Scottish talent to select from. Motherwell team was at that stage, full of Scots. Nowadays it has completely changed. You go, there's more non-Scots than Scots playing in these teams, and that can be good. I think there was a stat at the end of last season, I might have got it again wrong, that Ross County versus St Mirren in the Premiership had fewer Scots than Napoli versus Bologna in Serie A. That can't be good for Scottish football.
No. So, just before we kind of move on to Kris, do you have a solution? We used to have the kind of under 21 and homegrown rules. We've got this the sort of the link-ups between clubs in the Premiership and further down the pyramid to send players on loan, but it's still not the top flight they're playing in.
It's not the top flight they're playing in, and it's very difficult. I can't say to Jim Goodwin, you need to pick more Scots, Jim, because Jim will say, I need to win games of football, otherwise I'll be sacked in October. So Jim Goodwin's there to do a job for himself and for Dundee United. He's not there to cure all the ills of Scottish football. But I think there are people at Hampden who need to look at this and be concerned at this.
So just some breaking news. We'll keep you posted throughout the Scottish Sun online and on social media. Aberdeen linked with Marko Lazetic again.
Is he Scottish?
No, it doesn't. Mick Lazetic maybe, but no. So that is one that we'll keep following, but just some sort of breaking news there. Aberdeen trying to get a move done for Marko Lazetic of Milan. So let yourselves be known, be heard in the comments. Celtic fans, Rangers fans, across the rest of the Scottish Premiership, send your comments in and indeed your emails. Roger is going to speak to Kris Boyd as we look ahead to what is a big week with the league coming back.
Well, we can now head to Sun Sports. Kris Boyd, it's the middle of the transfer window. Boyd, Rangers and Celtic, very struggling to get the players in. I see you've made a big investment in new wallpaper. What are we thinking? What are we thinking ahead of Rangers' return to Greece on Wednesday night? 2-0 advantage in the first leg. He rested almost all of the key players. Russell Martin against Middlesbrough at the weekend. Will they be ready to see out the job in Athens on Wednesday, do you think?
I think they'll get through the tie, but for me, it was a strange one, wasn't it? We spoke about it, last week in terms of Rangers potentially being undercooked. I don't think that was the case. I think they could easily have been 2, maybe even 3-0 down, and I've got Jack Butland to thank for keeping them in it. But I think especially the second half, Rangers were more than worthy of 1 or 2 goals. I think the frustrating part from their point of view will be that they weren't able to go and get that 3rd or 4th goal, which leaves the tie wide open, Roger. There's no getting away from it. If Panathinaikos have to be able to nip one early doors, then all of a sudden the pressure's on.
Well, transfer speculation as there always is this time of year. Boyd, Rangers linked with Jesurun Raksaki, Mikey Moore, with Oliver Antman. But of the performances so far of the two scorers last week, Finlay Curtis and Jiri Gassama, does that take away from the urgency of getting players in those attacking areas?
No, not for me. I don't think you can rest on the here and now in terms of yes. There was a good goal from Finlay Curtis last week, and both goals were good finishes. But there is no doubt Rangers need reinforcements in the forward area. They've obviously the whole Dessers and Igaman scenario continues to roll on as such. It's something that needs addressed. The one I will say is, and he's come in for plenty of criticism, Roger, Danilo was a tidy header at the weekend as well. Yeah. Tidy header from him. If it'll be interesting if he he's obviously had a pre-season under his belt. I've always thought there's a finisher in there. He does look as if he's someone who can score goals. Whether his level of fitness can get up to a level where he can contribute week in, week out for Rangers remains to be seen. But there is someone there who knows where the goal is, can get himself in a position to score goals. But I don't think that Russell Martin will be. If you go back 6 weeks ago, there was absolutely no way that anybody would have suggested that any of Rangers' front three from last week would have started a Champions League game. So I don't think Russell Martin will be. Yes, you won the game. Two, Gassami and Finlay Curtis have obviously got the goals, but he's still going to be looking for reinforcements in and around that forward area, and he has to, because Rangers have to get better. I don't think that Kieran Dill, no disrespect to him, but I don't think he's going to be someone who is going to, especially in that area, is going to take you closer to Celtic or start winning trophies again. Dessers, his future does look as if it's going to be away from Ibrox. Igaman potentially the same. So for me, I think Rangers still need to strengthen in that area. There's obviously been links with Mikey Moore from Tottenham on loan for a season, which I think on one hand would be a decent enough addition. You said glowing reports in terms of breaking through at Tottenham, but I don't think he's been in loan before. I might be wrong, but I don't think he's been in loan before. That first loan move away can be sometimes a higher risk than somebody that's maybe been in loan before. So I wouldn't, for me, it might end up being a good signing, but at the same time, I think it's unfair to put a lot of pressure on a youngster coming in to lead the life for Rangers.
Look what it was like when Amad Diallo came in from Manchester United. Yeah. He came in, he was going to be the next great thing as well. And sometimes these loan deals, when you're very young men, it doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I always think, speaking to managers and the coaching courses you've been on and listening to even chief execs and that as well, you're always sceptical of that first loan of a player, because it is the first time they've been out that environment of coming through at a football club. That first loan move for a young boy can be crucial because there's so many factors that you've got to take into consideration. Moving away from home, how's you going to adapt? Staying in your own potentially as well. So there is a lot of the pressures of. A lot of players might move to smaller clubs as such. If you think you're at a big Premier League club or even a Championship team, you might move out for experience. But a lot of the times, the football club you move to isn't going to be as big as the one you're at. I don't think that's the case with Tottenham and moving to Rangers. Obviously Tottenham are a huge football club, a huge fan base, but there's a pressure within Rangers to be winning every single week. And for me, as a young boy, it might be a big ask, but that's not to say he's not going to come and do it. It might well work, but there is no doubt Russell Martin and Rangers need to get reinforcements in the forward areas. If you can't keep. What I will add to that as well, Roger, you can't just keep bringing players in and not getting players out the door. Rangers need to start moving them on. I mean, obviously Robin Propper went during the week, but there's a few more need to head out the exit door as well.
Brendan Rodgers equally keen to bring players in that sort of same area of the park. Jacob Brown at Go Ahead Eagles has been one who's been linked. Ballistic Antwerp's a long-term target. At each of his press conferences, he is making the point to the board to remind them that Celtic need players in. Nicholas Kuhn away, Jota injured. He keeps saying they haven't had a like-for-like replacement since Kyogo went in January, albeit Shin Yamada's in and scored the winning penalty at the weekend in the fourth place playoff at the Como Cup against Al-Ahli.
Yeah, but I think Brendan Rodgers was quite quick to point to the fact that was a club signing as well. So I think that when you look at the Kyogo one hasn't been replaced. Celtic might look at the fact that we spent £9 million on Adamida, who hasn't quite hit the heights that you expected, and again you're asking for another big outlay. Similar to Rangers in a way. You wouldn't have thought that front three would be Rangers front three, but if Celtic, obviously start the season at the weekend, looking at it right now, I think Daizen Maeda is the only one that's absolutely nailed on to be in that front three. And when you think of Celtic, yes, I've always had 5 or 6 players in and around that area, but you kind of knew start of the season, big games, what front three it was going to be. And I don't think that's the case right now. Brendan Rodgers is obviously, he just keeps reminding. I think he's reminding the fans because Celtic will know that within the structure that they've got, that they won't need to get players in. But Brendan's intelligent. He's an intelligent guy, and just dropping wee things in that he has been in recent interviews as such. It's just keeping the pressure on. The fans will keep reminding the board we need to get players in, and that's exactly what Brendan Rodgers is doing right now. There is no doubt that they've added players. Nygren, I think, looks a good addition in that midfield area. I think he'll be a good addition for Celtic. It'll be interesting to see. I know he's down as a winger, but he has been playing as in and around that middle area. So it'll be interesting to see what 3 out of the 4 players play. Maybe Nygren goes off the right hand side. I don't know. Maybe he does. Jamesy Forrest and people like that as well can come back in, but Yang's obviously still there as well, isn't he? But he's been linked with.
It's a strange situation, though, buddy, because you speak about the spend, 9 million on Ida, 11 million in Engels, 6 million in Trusty, all towards the end of August last year. But a year on, Celtic could kickstart the defence of the title, and none of the 3 of them are really guaranteed their starting place.
Yeah. And by the way, if you are the Celtic board and you're looking at that, then there would be questions asked. There would be. There's no doubt that Engels is a good footballer, but you've went and signed Nygren, you say, isn't it? Nygren. Yeah. And then you've got Engels in there, you've got Hatate, you've got McGregor. So yes, Nygren can play off that right hand side. We know that, but he has been playing in the central role. So it'll be interesting to see what 3 actually start the game. You would expect Adamida to start because he seems to be the only striker or Kenny, he's here as well and obviously showed up. But it'll be, I think we've been used to Celtic doing this, over the years in terms of waiting to see where they've got. But the thing I will say is, Roger, they've been in the Champions League for a couple of years now, and they have seemed to, they've not really had to rush to get their business done. You go back to when Celtic needed those qualifying games as such, and they were always. We might sign this one, but we'll wait and see what happens in the Champions League. If we get knocked out of that, then we'll sell somebody else. Celtic have been selling players, but not really bringing them in. And there's an argument to be said that, and Brendan Rodgers, I think, will be reiterating this to their board as well. Right now, Celtic are weaker in the forward areas than what they were at the start of last season.
Yeah, and even in January, before Kyogo left, you could have a front 3 of Jota, Kyogo, and Kuhn, and that's without the top scorer Daizen Maeda or the £9 million man Ida's there. So they definitely are. We need to touch European football. Have Hibs and Dundee United done the hard part in their games, or is that still to come?
I think Dundee United would be the one where you're saying, going away from home in Europe is difficult. It doesn't matter wherever you're going. I'm sure Jim Goodwin would have expected to maybe go with a 2 or 3-0 lead. He's got a lead, albeit it's a small one. But you kind of, can Dundee United go away from home and score? Of course they can. But you would expect. It would be a blow for Scottish football if Dundee United have to go out for a team to Luxembourg. It would be a blow.
the last Scottish team to take a 1-0 lead to Luxembourg. The evening ended with the manager standing in a
managing the bush
and addressing fans. You don't want that for Jim Goodwin on Thursday night.
No, you definitely don't. So as I said, I think for Dundee United, to top off, obviously a magnificent season last year and getting that top six and then qualifying for Europe, finishing fourth, giving them an opportunity. The last thing they would want, is it going to be difficult for them to qualify for the group stages? Yes. But the last thing they would want is to go out to a team from Luxembourg. And then you look at, we switched to Edinburgh, Hibs. Listen, I think it was a fantastic result. It really was. But it's going to be another difficult game for them on Thursday night. They've given themselves an opportunity, but played really well in the game. Actually, I watched it. Had to pay £12 for it as well. I need to go on to somebody at Hibs. I can't be spending £12 to watch Hibs play. So I need to go on to somebody that try and see if I can get a pass. Or I might even go away to see.
You must have saved more than that in the discount for that wallpaper.
I'll take it back. But I think that Hibs have they've given themselves a chance, but it's going to be a very difficult game. The latter stages on Thursday night, we were able to see what they're going to face. And they're going to have to, for all Hibs were really, really good last Thursday, they're going to have to be better this Thursday if they're going to go through.
And the prize is there for both teams. Hibs could go back to Scandinavia to take on Fredrikstad if they get through. Even if they lose and drop into the Conference League, Red Star Belgrade would be an interesting tie for Dundee United if they get through. It's looking likely the Rapid Vienna would be their opponents. The prizes are there, exciting games for the fans at this time of year.
Yeah, they are, but obviously Dundee United, for the finances of going through this one, you would say, picking up a little bit more extra money. When the draw came out, they would have, if they could go down through and pick a team that they wanted, it'd probably been the one that they're playing right now. But they're giving them every opportunity of going through. And as you say, Rapid Vienna, the other side would be a dream draw for them in terms of, this stage of the competition. It's going to be very difficult for them to get any further than that. But, the Hibs one is interesting. If Hibs can get through this, they've got a real chance. I think it was obviously the Norwegian Cup. Teams struggling in the league as well right now. So if Hibs have to get through this, Hibs will fancy their chances in the next round as well. But it's going to be a very, very difficult game on Thursday. And looking at it, I know he's been the talisman now for a number of years, and he's even left and came back. But early on in the game on Thursday night, they were spooked by Martin Boyle. He's going to have a huge part to play this Thursday. His pace. He looks as if he was a little spell there when you kind of thought that maybe the end is coming for Martin Boyle, but he seems to be full of life again. Caused problems on Thursday night there, and Hibs will be needing a big performance for him. Kieran Bowie as well. Again, I feel as if another young Scottish striker that has got an exciting future ahead of him. So if the two of them, if David Gray goes with two strikers, the two of them could prove to be, a handful for the defence and see where that takes them. But as I said, I'll say it again. I think Hibs need to. They were brilliant Thursday night, but they're going to have to be that and some again this Thursday if they're going to go through.
And before we go, Boydie, a Kilmarnock player is off to Serie A this afternoon. Corey Ndaba completed his move to Lecce from Rugby Park. That was one that sort of came from nothing Thursday, Friday last week. He was paraded with the Lecce gear on Saturday, much to Kilmarnock's consternation because the deal hadn't been done. It's done now. Were you surprised as anyone else, or has he earned it?
Yeah, actually, I heard last week there was a chance it was going to happen, and to be fair to him, I think he's done well, but it was never one where I thought, well, you've got an opportunity to go to Serie A, but again, I think it just shows you, Roger, I think our game gets talked down quite a bit, but you're now looking at it saying there's another one who, albeit I think he came up from Ipswich and he has done well for a period of time, but he's been here for a short time, and in terms of a permanent transfer. So for Kilmarnock, you'd imagine it's substantial money, which will help them, because you're always looking to bring in players, give them a platform, and move them on. But for teams from Serie A, and we've seen it before, coming getting Doig and Ferguson and boys like that, and there's other ones who have moved away. Billy Gilmer, obviously Tommy's never been here, but the Scottish boys playing abroad, Che Adams. But they have shopped in this market before. Lennon Miller's another one that's been linked with moves to Serie A. So it shows you that in terms of our clubs, we do okay considering. There is some decent players here, albeit, I think the league could be a lot better. The standard could be a lot better, but it might not be as bad as what a lot of people make it out to be. And when you're getting moves like that, getting the money that, Kilmarnock will for Corey and Dava, it's a good move all round.
And can he keep up that perfect record of Killie players moving overseas? Is there a mattress store in Lecce he could do an advert for?
It might well be. There might well be. I would like to. It was tough enough for me to do it in American. I wouldn't like to try it in Italian.
No, his Irish accent. Boydie, thank you very much. I'll let you go and finish that wallpapering. We will catch up with you soon on Go Ballistic.
Thank you, Kris. So thanks once again to you for watching back home. Remember to leave your comments down below and your emails for the guys. If you haven't subscribed yet, lots of great content on the YouTube channel, and stay tuned online and in the paper.